All right, welcome to Hannity. And breaking tonight, the investigation into the deep state's abuse of power has now come full circle. Finally, Fox News tonight can confirm Christopher Steele, the former MI6 agent who created the dirty Clinton bought and paid for Russian dossier, was in fact grilled by federal prosecutors in June. Now, the interview with Steele reportedly lasted over 15 hours. It was conducted by lawyers that were working for the DOJ's Inspector General. That's Michael Horowitz. This is one of two reasons that the IG report is delayed. The other being key witnesses now, at the last minute, have finally decided to cooperate. This is going to get very interesting, but make no mistake about it, a crucial development in the IG's investigation into FISA abuse. That would be James Comey, Sally Yates, Andrew McCabe, and, yeah, even Rod Rosenstein should be very worried tonight. We know for a fact that Steele's dirty dossier, bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton, was unverified, as a matter of fact, unverifiable, full of salacious lies. Even Christopher Steele himself previously admitting under oath he had no idea whether any of the contents were true or not. And we know the New York Times now suggesting that that dossier, Russian dossier, was full of Russian misinformation from the get-go to influence the 2016 elections and more. Now, Robert Mueller, I'm trying to understand, maybe we'll find out next Wednesday, why did you and your team have time for FARA violations, loan applications from years gone by, taxi medallions, taxes from years gone by? How did you possibly ignore Hillary Clinton's bought and paid for Russian lies used to get a warrant to spy on the Trump campaign, the Trump transition, and the Trump presidency? And, of course, we also know Christopher Steele hated Donald Trump, and he was being paid a ton of money. Let's see, he was being paid by the Clinton campaign, the DNC, the FBI, and some oligarch. Good gig if you can get it. You paid 4 people paying you for lies. And so Steele spread his BS, anti-Trump rumors to anyone and everyone who would listen, including high-level officials in the FBI, the DOJ, Obama's State Department, the intel community, and we now know multiple media outlets. Even after he was fired for lying and leaking by the FBI, well, he was still using Bruce Ohr to funnel more lies, this time to Mueller and his team of witch hunters. By the way, did Mueller use any of this information? Great question for next Wednesday. Now, because of Steele's rampant bias, conflicts of interest, and blatant inaccuracies in his so-called research, well, now multiple serious red flags were raised by officials at the FBI, the State Department, and many, many others. That didn't seem to matter to James Comey, the super patriot. He used this phony Russian dossier filled with these lies as the basis for the FISA warrant application. That's right, to spy on the Trump campaign. He swore that the evidence was true and accurate. At the top of that, I am told, at the top of the FISA application, it says verified. But we know it was nothing but. Anyway, joining us now tonight with so much more on Steele's time in the hot seat, our own Catherine Herridge. Catherine, the one thing that stands out is if he testified 15 hours, we know in an interrogatory under oath, under the threat of perjury, he went on the record saying he didn't know if any of it was true.
Well, that's right, Sean. Good evening. Based on our reporting, the former British spy Christopher Steele was concerned he would get, quote, thrown under the bus in the Inspector General's report, and the appointment of U.S. Attorney John Durham to investigate the origins of the Russia probe ramped up the pressure on Steele to cooperate. Fox News was first to report that a key witness outside the FBI and Justice Department had agreed to talk with the Inspector General Michael E. Horowitz at the 11th hour, and that now appears to be Steele. Reuters broke new details this morning that Steele was interviewed in the U.K. in June by 3 lawyers from the Inspector General's office. And as we reported on your show last night, these late-breaking developments required some witnesses to be re-interviewed to deconflict their accounts, flagging another potentially significant detail that Steele was apparently interviewed twice by investigators working for Special Counsel Robert Mueller in September 2017. But the nearly 500-page report makes no direct reference to the so-called Steele dossier used to secure the surveillance warrant for Trump campaign aid. The Mueller report calls the dossier instead Steele Reporting or Steele Reports, which has the effect of minimizing the fact that Democrats paid for the opposition research used by the FBI and DOJ to secure that surveillance warrant in October 2016, and then they used it again to secure multiple renewals, Sean.
Unbelievable. And now we know why the Inspector General has been delayed interviewing Steele, these other people coming forward, as per your report last night. Great work, as always,
You're
Catherine
welcome,
Herridge
Sean.
in Washington tonight. Now, it has been said absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now, nowhere is this more obvious than the Russia witch hunt. Bob Mueller's merry band of Democratic donors, they were given a very broad mandate and platform and tremendous power to investigate all things Donald Trump and Russian interference. And while they found no collusion, no conspiracy, no chargeable obstruction, they did manage to wreck the lives of multiple people that were associated with the president, of course, with strong-arm tactics that should make every single American concerned. If you care about constitutional and civil liberties, by the way, not even war hero, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, 33 years of service, he was not spared either. The combat vet fell victim to what was a perjury trap. McCabe, Comey bragging about it. He and members of his family were threatened with significant prison time. His screws were turned in the hopes that he'd sing or compose, as Judge Ellis once said. And, of course, in the process, mounting legal bills wrecked his family finances. He had to sell his house. He ultimately agreed to plead guilty to lying to the FBI, and the FBI didn't think he lied. He did it to save his family and his son in particular. But tonight, thanks to investigative reporter Sarah Carter, we are learning some damning new information about Flynn's plea deal. And according to her brand new legal counsel, the ever so powerful, smart Sidney Powell, prosecutors actually wanted Flynn to lie under oath against his former business partner in a case surrounding, again, a FARA violation. A recent defense filing states, quote, the prosecutors have been adamant that Mr. Flynn testified that he authorized the filing of the FARA form knowing and intending that it contained false statements. Mr. Flynn cannot give that testimony because it's not true. According to Sarah Carter's reporting, because Flynn is refusing to give the testimony they are demanding that he says is not true, federal prosecutors are now planning to portray Flynn as a co-conspirator in the case.
Joining me now for a reaction is former independent counsel, Fox News contributor Ken Starr, along with former U.S. Attorney Brett Tolman and criminal defense attorney David Schoen. Great to have all three of you here. Judge Starr, let me begin with you.
Thank you.
I remember the Comey testimony vividly because I write extensively about it in my book. And, it strikes me that if there's an email that essentially, Loretta Lynch, the attorney general, is saying, I'm not going to let this case go too far against Hillary Clinton. My goodness, doesn't that need to be declassified?
Yes, indeed. Greg, I think you and I and the American people are in agreement. We need more rather than less, and there should, especially in light of all the questions, very serious questions, about the integrity of the FBI's leadership and even touching on the Justice Department during that period in 2016, before the president was elected. We need declassification. Happily, as you know, President Trump has delegated that responsibility to the Attorney General of the United States, Bill Barr, who's very experienced, and he's going to do a very professional job of protecting national security, sources and methods, but also then getting the information out that we, the people, need in order to make our own judgment about what happened.
David, the evidence is pretty compelling that the fix was in, that Hillary Clinton was not going to be charged. And I'll point your attention to what Peter Strzok said in private testimony. He said that it was the DOJ attorneys that told the FBI to change gross negligence to extremely careless. And then his lover, Lisa Page, testified that the DOJ said, quote, you're not going to charge gross negligence. Was the fix in?
Absolutely. I mean, it's very, very troubling. And remember, Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General, said that he didn't have access to all of the emails. So we still haven't seen some of the emails between Strzok and Page. You discuss this stuff brilliantly, I think, in your book, starting at page 40, about this whole fix that clearly was in. And there's a question. Judge Starr spoke beautifully earlier, and he's absolutely right. But there's a real question as to whether and why this information was classified in the first place. I frankly just don't believe, former Director Comey, that there was a need for it to be classified.
Brett, I wonder if you believe Comey, because on the day he cleared Hillary Clinton, he said I've not coordinated or reviewed this statement in any way with the Department of Justice or any part of the government. They don't know what I'm about to say. Then how come 4 days earlier, Page sent a text that said she, Lynch, knows no charges will be brought?
Yeah, this is one of the more shocking discoveries, I think, for many of us that worked in the Department of Justice. Jim Comey held himself out as having the white hat. He was the guy that was all about transparency, all about the rules, following the rules. You look at what he said in that hearing, and he says, I would have to give a classified answer in response to that. Well, he stuck with that, and he continued to use that as the defense mechanism to reveal the things that he was doing. Many of us that were in the Department of Justice worked with Jim Comey, would have fired Jim Comey instantly on many of the issues that we now know he was involved in and how he handled them.
And Judge Starr, I mean, the twist on all of this is reportedly it was the Russians that intercepted this email, which only underscores that Hillary Clinton really did jeopardize national security with her private, unauthorized, unsecured server, even though President Obama said, oh, gee, she didn't jeopardize national security.
Yes, and that can't be right. It absolutely was so unconscionable that the Secretary of State would do what she did and do it intentionally. And the changing of the characterization, I think, is, well, to me, it's unpardonable. You do not, when the FBI comes forward with a conclusion based upon their very careful evaluation of all the facts, then say, no, we're going to change that. That's not your view. Your view is instead a softer and gentler view. And so there's just an enormous number of questions about the professionalism, frankly, of the DOJ and its relationships with the FBI, leadership in particular, during the course of the Obama administration. And the Loretta Lynch email, if this is true, is absolutely explosive, because that shows that there is a very serious issue of integrity at the very top of the Justice Department.
If people like Loretta Lynch, David, at the Department of Justice made a decision on not to charge for political reasons, is that obstruction?
Oh, absolutely. It's obstruction and several other things. It's so problematic. Listen, as I've told you before, my father was an FBI agent, and we're very proud of that. What these people did, Comey, McCabe, Strzok, Page, this whole crew, tore down the reputation of one of the greatest agencies in the history of the country. And so-called civil libertarians like Nadler, Jerry Nadler, should be outraged by it. They should be outraged by the people they've embraced. That tells you that their Trump hatred outweighs everything else in their agenda. And that's not what they were elected to do.
Brett, I'll let you have the last word.
Well, I'll tell you, we should be afraid of what pattern we're starting to see. We have seen the director of the FBI follow a pattern of hiding things that he doesn't want us to see, leaking things that he hopes to get out there, not charging Hillary Clinton when many of us thought there should have been charges. And why? Why does he come out right before the election? Because he thought she was going to win, and he was going to cover for her after she became president. Then the same pattern seems to occur with the FISA court, when we have the Steele dossier and the almost actionable, request from the FBI to the FISA court that we now know is not accurate. So what we are seeing is a pattern that should scare folks. That's what Congress should be looking into, is what is it those in power are doing with the power they have.
Abuse of power and corruption to perpetuate power. Judge Ken Starr, Brett, thank you. David, as always, appreciate it.